All gave some gave all. Some would march on, others would fall. There are no winners in war when you consider the cost. You cannot justify the thousands of lives for our own that were lost. Wars leave scars that in time may fade, but not without taking a toll. However, the deepest wounds are those that scar the very heart and soul. For those that saw action during wartime, I'm sure without a doubt, they've had to live with the memories of fallen comrades, their brothers, someone they cared deeply about. And all the families left behind with only their memories to carry them through, also paying the price of freedom won for me and you. We are all aware that times have changed, and yet there are certain things we must never forget. Be proud of our flag, and long may she wave, and long may we remember what so many gave.
Hi, I'm Arlen Klaus. I live in Madison. I more or less volunteered for the Air Force. I spent from 1956 to 1960 in the Air Force. I took my basic training in California, tech school in Cheyenne, Wyoming. It was kind of cold out there in the wintertime. We were our barracks was way on the very end of the base, so we open space between there and there. After my tech school, I went to Dover, Delaware. Was there a while, and from Dover, Delaware, I went to Europe. I went to France. I was over in France. I kind of loved that because I was at a NATO base. It was in Fontainebleau, France, and it was by Napoleon's chateau. So that was pretty great there. And I was a mechanic, auto mechanic there. Spent my time there. And the reason I joined the Air Force, a couple of buddies of mine kind of talked me into it, and I was farming then, and kind of a dry year, so I just went to the Air Force and did my duty. And well, one of those things that says I can kind of remember quite a bit. When I was in basic training, on my 21st birthday, I pulled KP, and when we got all done with KP that night, I told the cook, I said, it's my 21st birthday. He said, well, we got to celebrate. So we went to the freezer, brought out a case of pears, and we ate pears for my 21st birthday. So that was kind of interesting. That's one of the things I remember while I was in the service. Otherwise than that, like I say, I was a mechanic. And if I had to do anything different today, I'd probably like to go back over to Europe and see more things that I've never seen before. I mean, on the base that I worked at, was a NATO base, was a detachment of NATO, and there was 7 different nationalities there. I worked with a Belgian sergeant. I think I was the only guy in the shop that worked with him because he learned to cuss and I learned to cuss in French. He spoke French. I learned to cuss in French and he learned to cuss in English. So I kind of enjoyed that because it was, well, it wasn't normal for what we did over there because normal bases you go to work early and work, but being this was a NATO base, we kind of went to work about 9 o'clock of the day and took 2 hours off for dinner, and so we really was kind of a lush assignment. And today, I'd tell the young people today that it'd be good to go serve your country because you learn discipline, and I think you learn a trade. Sometimes you learn a trade while you're in the service, and it's really good. And if I had to do it over again, I think I'd do it over again.
Hi, my name's Steve Wolverton. I'm from Madison, Nebraska. I grew up there, graduated from high school in 1969. Decided to go to college here, so I had what's called a student deferment. Vietnam was going on heavy at the time. I didn't keep my classes up, so I would have gotten drafted. So some friends of mine talked me into joining the Army Reserve Unit here in Norfolk. I also wanted to start farming, so it was a choice whether to go on active duty or reserve unit where I'd stay at home and be able to do my farming, which almost was interrupted, but we got through it. So I was a farmer after I got out of the service. I joined that unit in July of 1970, served 6 years. I was sent to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, trained as a combat engineer, ran a bulldozer, which is interesting. Our unit was a supply unit, so had nothing to do with supply. So they had to retrain me, but that's what was going on back then. There was about 20 of us that got into this unit at the same time. And we came back as E3s. And about a year later, I don't know why the Army did this, guys that were coming back from AIT were Spec 4s. So it filled all the slots in our unit, and there was a bunch of us that had more time and grade but didn't get promoted. Didn't get promoted until the last year I was in the unit. So that was kind of a strange. We had guys younger than us that outranked us. Maybe that's pretty common in the service, I don't know. But what was the most rewarding moment? Getting promoted finally. There's a lot of things. The positives of the training. It maybe help you do things later in life. There were 4 of my classmates in my unit, and plus surrounding towns, so you make friends and you still see those guys today. That's 52 years ago, and we still see quite a few guys like that. The disadvantages, being away from home, loved ones. About being a veteran, being an Army reservist, without serving on active duty anywhere other than training, the government doesn't even consider us veterans. I wear an Army veteran hat because I did serve in the Army for 6 years, and I'm proud of that. I did my part my way. What does it mean to be a veteran? Well, being in the military, I've always been interested in it. I'm still pretty active today in our American Legion. I'm a member of we call ourselves F Troop. We do funerals, it's a color guard funerals, and I've advanced up to where I'm the sergeant at arms now. I'm the guy that calls and makes the commands. I've been doing that for 38 years. And I also belong to the American Legion Riders out of the post here in Norfolk. We do basically the same thing. We escort families and veterans' remains for funerals. It's sort of my way of honoring veterans, guys that I consider veterans that did more than I ever did. I think they deserve all accolades they can get. The military is sort of a strange, no matter what branch of service, we get together and it's fun to be around them. When we talk about something that we did in the military, everybody's familiar with it. So it was a good experience overall. If I had to do over, I probably would have done active duty, but I guess I wouldn't change too much other than that. So I did my part in some small way.
I'm Neil Freidenberg. I live in Madison. I was living in Madison when I enlisted in the Navy in 1952. I don't know why I picked the Navy over any other branch. I guess had my draft notice to get drafted, and I think that was the only branch I could get in before I got drafted. I was in the service for 4 years, and most of my time, all the time after my boot camp, was on 2 different ships, the USS Frankie Evans and the USS Lewis. The most memorable experience I had, it was all pretty good. We always stopped in Hawaii every time going over to Japan and back, so I was in Pearl Harbor 7 times while I was in the service. And I had a couple of good supply officers as my bosses when I was in the service. I made some pretty good friends in the service, but after I got out, I never kept in touch with them. Being homesick was probably the hardest part of being in the service. Didn't bother me too much, but I was. And when I found out I was getting out, I was happy. And I now live back in Madison. After I got out of the service, I went back to farming. And I guess if anybody is interested in the service today, I would recommend it. But they have to be really interested in it. The worst day of my time in the service was when I got lumps in boot camp. That was a bad day. Other than that, I guess I don't have anything else to say.
Hello, my name is Roger Ackley, and I was living in Columbus, Nebraska when I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force back in 1969. At that time, I was 19 years of age, and I was in the service a total of 4 years. And I started out, of course, with the Air Force, all the basic trainings in San Antonio, Texas. And I was there for basic training, and I learned a lot about military discipline and things like that. And after that, I went to Denver, Colorado, to Lowry Air Force Base for some advanced training in supply. And then after that, they transferred me to Chanute Air Force Base in Grand Jewel, Illinois. And so I was just there like 8 months, and then I got my orders to go to Vietnam. So I went to Air Force Base by the name of Phuket, and the very first night that I was there, we got introduced to a war zone because we had a rocket attack and blew to step off of our barracks door that we were in. So one person got injured, but nobody got killed. We had a rocket attack about once every month. We had 12 of them in the year. And I was there for 1 year, and then I left. And came back, and I finished up my time at Minot, North Dakota. People that have never lived in a war zone have no idea what it's like. I mean, we were under stress 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 364 days. And you get used to it in a way, but it's always there. There's always a threat that you could have a rocket attack at any time. And of course, nothing goes as planned. There's no book on how war is going to go and how it's going to turn out. Being in the military did, I think, have lasting effects on my life because I've gotten more involved in different things like the American Legion, VFW, and other things in life that related to my career in farming and stuff. I think it helped me mature and be a better citizen. I watch a lot of news, and I'm still interested in what the military is and does every day. So that's the thing that I remember most. And, I thank you for letting me speak.
I'm Darrell Dawson. I was working on a cattle ranch in Springview office, east of Springview, Nebraska, when I got drafted. And how I ended up in the Navy, because everybody else that got drafted went into the Army. But they drafted 180 men in October of 1965 into the Navy. And that was the only time since World War II that they ever drafted people in the Navy. I went to boot camp in San Diego. The worst hellhole I was ever in. All it did was rain. It was either 110 degrees, you was either dying of heat or cold. It was terrible, but boot camp is something nobody really likes. It's a little hard, but not dangerous or anything like that. You just get yelled and cussed at a lot, and this type of thing. But I ended up a squad leader in my company, which was about 100 people in the company. And one thing that I was so glad, I went through several days of firefighting school, which probably saved my life and probably a few others too. When I first went aboard ship, they flew me to France and then across the Mediterranean, where I got aboard the USS Forrestal, CVA 59. When we got to Vietnam, of course, then we was sending fighters and bombers off of our ship. And while we were there, we got hit with a rocket. Senator John McCain was in his jet, fired up, ready to go. And this rocket hit the fuel tank on John McCain's plane. And when that rocket hit this gas tank, just happened to be John McCain's plane, but it hit that huge gas tank that hangs down below, and avgas went all over the aft end of that ship. and it caught fire, of course, immediately. And that's where I spent about the next 24 hours fighting that fire there, trying to rescue other sailors that I knew was trapped. And I didn't have too much success, you know, because them ones there was so much fire, so much heat, that they just killed them, you know. It was such a terrible fire. Yeah, I stayed on the ship and I fought that fire. I shouldn't say me, you know, we fought that fire for 36 to 48 hours to get it completely cooled down, which was a hard thing to do. But this one guy that worked for me, he wanted to go help fight this fire, but he wasn't trained well enough, and I didn't want him to go. But he finally talked me into letting him go. And we broke into a compartment that we didn't know what it was, but it was a battery locker, which was a small room about the size of this living room that was full of batteries. And I cut the door off and was hosing the inside down, and there was one person in there dead. But I was hosing that room down with salt water. And salt water and hydrochloric acid makes chlorine gas. And I wasn't being careful enough with keeping our gas mask tight and stuff like that. And I let this young guy go in there with me, and we both ended up getting a whiff of this chlorine gas, and we both dropped dead. And I don't know who it was, but I had a big guy standing watch at the door to this compartment. And I'm fairly sure he grabbed me, and I don't know who grabbed Ray that was in there with me, but they run us to the aid station. We were both clinically dead, but they took a cardiac needle and shot drone, you know, and right directly into our heart. And I came back fairly quick. But Ray, my friend, they just couldn't bring him back. Just the difference in people or something, I don't know. But I came back sicker than a dog, of course, but he was laying right beside me, and I could get a hold of him, and I held him. Because they'd give up. I knew he was dead, but I felt terrible. I should have stayed with my first thing and never let him go, but, well, maybe that'd been somebody else, I guess. You never know. To tell you the truth, if they needed us, you know, if there was a war, I'd do it in a minute. I think the military is one of the best things that any young man, especially an unmarried young man, can do. You can take a 17-year-old kid and make a man out of him in a hurry.
And on closing, I just want to convey our appreciation and thank you for joining us today. Thank you, veterans, and to those who shared their stories and for standing up for Old Glory. We all know freedom isn't free. There's a huge price paid for all our liberties. God bless America, land of our birth, and God bless America, the greatest nation on earth.